My details, should you wish to contact me, are on the screen now. I've got a fairly unique name, so I'm fairly easy to find, but please do feel free to message me anytime on LinkedIn, or drop us a message on any of the other social channels you can see there as well. Now, marketing for independent schools is different to any other sector. And that's mainly due to the fact that what we're dealing with is the most important area of most parents' lives, children, right? This changes the whole process, and it can make it longer than other sales cycles. Selecting and choosing something that's such a large financial commitment and affects their child's entire life at the same time is never going to be a decision that they can make lightly. But of course, you know this. Now, the standard journey for many parents, or all parents, might be very similar. They see an advert, they make a call, they get a prospectus, they visit the school, maybe meet the head. But this depends on the time and the inclination of the individual. The audience, although varied, tend to have interconnecting networks. They are each other's influencers, and they're who we need to influence. Yes, people gossip, and gossip itself is the very origin of all storytelling, but the digital world now revolutionized the way that we gather information. A mix of promotional material, opinion, as well as journalism, will form the information that we have available. So what's first? Well, a parent can't enroll their child with you if they don't know you exist. You want, however, to make sure that those who know you exist are actually your prospective audience. Those who you know will find your particular individual offering right for them. You need to deeply understand who they are. Perhaps create fictional characters to represent your audience mix with all their own little pain points and characteristics. The parent looking to get their 4-year-old into a school, of course, is going to have very different questions and needs to the parent getting their 15-year-old into school. Some are more worried about academic success, some don't care. It might be the most valuable first move you can do is to engage a company to do this kind of legwork for you. Nailing down the actual unique offering and position of your school and the areas of content that needs to be distributed to is really, really key. I'll give a few thoughts on that later. Once you can identify these individual characters, you'll find it much easier to push them relevant content or draw them in. You'll also find it easier to locate them to send that content to in the beginning. The cost of reaching them then goes down as you're being a lot more specific. We all know how expensive print advertising can be alone. Your visual content then acts as a way to showcase why you're the only place for their child. Interestingly, this educational phase, which is, after all, what your establishment does best, can be a place where we as an audience spend a lot of time. Consistent, constant communication is key. This level of content sits below your top line, brand work, and campaign level outputs, but we'll break all this down later. Your visual content then acts as a way to showcase why not only your place for the child, but your personality. So parents can identify whether their child actually is the right fit, so that your conversion is more accurate to those that should be at school versus those that potentially shouldn't. Now let's assume your amazing marketing works and this new child joins the school. The student and their parents then become your extended sales force. They are invaluable to you, not only for research, helping you further develop your fictional character groups, but they can write blog posts, create video content, share your own content through their channels, and if engaged, will help your retention overall. Repeat this cycle and refine it as you go. It won't work as you've done it once. You don't need to do it, I hear sometimes. Yes, you do, sadly. It's never finished, and it's a big reason the school experience overall improves. It adds financial stability, lifelong relationships, and engagement with staff and parents alike. If one was to bail on visual marketing, or not to do enough, the school simply risks being absent in the marketplace and a drop in enrollment and a perception of that leads to a vicious cycle of that the school just not being there. It means that the message is lost and now becomes controlled by those you have no influence over. We invest in oneself, of course, not for sales necessarily, but to help pull the right audience questions out of themselves and find a school that fits their needs. It really is time to lose the ego. Some have, not all of you, I'm sure none of you, which is to look the same as all your other competitors. No, a lot of schools aren't the only school that claims to be a place that concentrates on the individual, letting them thrive as themselves in a place that allows failure. It's time to get out of that comfort zone and give parents the ability to truly see your USPs. But again, you know this. Let's talk about video levels of content. It's the main stuff that we need to try and cover here anyway. So I'll start at what is perceived by a lot to be the lower run of content, but it's not necessarily to be thought about in those terms. This is what we call churn level. It's not the prettiest term, but this covers things like in-house creation and user-generated content. And they're wonderful, of course, when budgets are budgets and you want to be able to create content that's consistent and constant from your own means so that you can keep the message out there. It doesn't need to be the highest in terms of production values all the time. I'm saying that out loud in an office of people that will kill me later for saying that, but what it does need to be is consistent and constant. That goes for all your media, but you have people at your disposal to do this stuff for you. Here's an example. A school has a sixth form, and like many others, that sixth form has leadership roles and offers them to the students. There are house captains, almoners, head pupils, environmental captains perhaps. We set up a program with one client where these roles made their own content. Now, it's important to mention that control is really essential here, not only from a protection point, but also from a brand and messaging perspective. Individuals could create a series of, let's say, 12 video topics each. The school then releases monthly videos with a new topic each time. The contributor, a place, a location. In addition, there could be still imagery with text stories that are used weekly. Your production company could well run a workshop on how to shoot content to ensure consistency from the students. And then they control the edit output of each to make sure that it's relevant and brand protection and all the rest of it. I think one of the roles in a school we worked with was an environmental captain. They had links with a local zoo, so they went and they were talking about conservation efforts, but it showcased the students' independence, their confidence, their ability to be able to explore something through a new means. And let's face it, blogging and the multimedia world that these students are going out into could well form a lot of their job background or be part of it. So this kind of training, although adding to already busy roles, could be a massively valuable thing to be able to give them. You can also introduce paid campaigns around these, as they've got the potential to be some of the most viewed and effective content your school could create. It shows off student independence, like I said, the confidence, reliability, motivation, faith from the school in them to create content, facilities, external relationship, the list goes on. This level of content is also great for those frequently asked questions that can be delivered in a more creative and accessible way on your website. Questions around transport, for example. High-level informative is the next level of content. Again, I need to come up with slightly more sexy titles for these, but high-level informative. Now, this is where we try to begin by being creative, but most of the times we see people creating, or schools create pieces that sit on the website under the headings of things like academic, sport, pastoral, co-curriculum, arts, that kind of thing, your main school area headings. But they use these as their main promotion or brand level pieces, and that's definitely a big mistake. This is the stuff that sits on your website so that when your brand level or your campaign level advertising and promotional pieces draw them in like some sort of fishing lure, this then is your conversion level content. I'll use an example of a car brand. A high level campaign hits the audience heart and tells them that they believe in the same vision. Then the audience might well take a look on YouTube to find relative or relevant reviews and comparisons that further influence their decision. This is the level that we're talking about. But others aren't creating this content, so you have to, unlike the YouTube reviews of cars, for example. It's your conversion level content, and indeed it sits on your website for people to be able to be drawn from the advertising. It can be longer than that advertising level content in terms of duration. Its feel still very much needs to be in line with the brand level content, which means the language, the delivery, the style, etc. But it offers the opportunity to pinpoint your absolute unique offering and points of difference here. So yes, there's no problem with having high-level informative content under the brackets of academic, sport, etc. But it makes sure that that isn't delivered as your promotional content but something that acts as informative to answer those questions and further sell to those parents in a different way once they get to your website. After all, you've spent a lot of money on your website. Let's make it work hard for you. So the highest level, top tier, brand level and campaign. It's feels time. It's the most effective communication, persuasive marketing tool. Of course, I'm going to say that, but it is. Why? Well, this goes back to why marketing for schools is so different to anything else. The heart absolutely rules when it comes to deciding which school to choose, and so an emotional response will be the most powerful way of engaging a parent and a student. Film is a way to do this, but don't just make a pretty school film for the sake of it. This is about who it's for, what it needs to achieve, and where it's being distributed. Now, distribution is a really, really important thing that we'll come to afterwards, and we can talk through that in a bit of Q&A as well separately. This level of content, and I want to give you a couple of examples here as well, very much needs to be singular to a audience and a purpose. If you try and cram everything in, the message gets lost, people will go. We want to be specific with these. High concept is really important. It's just with the other brands the audience identifies with, and they'll be associating them with you. So if your audience is Aston Martin, or buying Aston Martins, then they're going to be looking at websites, going to be looking at content in a very similar way because it's the same level of product that they're identifying with. It's about positioning the emotional response with a personality and an ethos. One way or another, we choose a product by the way it makes us feel. This level of content has a job, and it's to create an invisible triangle between the brand, the audience, and their emotions. An ad created last summer by McDonald's on a wedding day at no point mentioned the mouth-watering, ridiculous good taste of a Big Mac. No, it showed a similar story for the audience and people in the ad. The frustration of the wedding being held just after lunch and having no chance to eat anything on the way up. You as an audience member then reflect, feel part of that, solidifying you with the brand. You've been connected by your identifying traits with that story or picture presented to you. Now, brands on our target audiences level do this in the same way. Patek Philippe, for example, doesn't show watches capabilities, they show family relationships. The watch that you never own, but you simply look after for the next generation. Now, the quality of this level and the level below is quite important. Why? Well, as your target audience are most likely being fed quite high level content by other brands that they spend with, you want to ensure that they see you in the same quality and assurance bracket. They are, after all, spending up to around £325,000 over the child's school education career, up to. But incredible when you start thinking of it in terms like that. Now, at this point, and actually some of the levels below, I would have really liked to show you examples, but streaming through this particular platform, it just doesn't support the streaming, and it'll be very juddery and juttery for you. So what I've done is I've created a mini website for you all so that you can go on afterwards to the link that I'll put up on the screen, and all the examples for the relevant contents that you'll see here will be on that mini website for you just to click and watch in your own time. You're very welcome. The first thing I would have liked to have shown you is a recent brand level piece that we created for Millfield School. Some of you may be familiar with them. They're based down in Somerset and have been famous as a sporting school, but certainly held in high regard. Shot in around 3 days, it was scripted and in line with a refresh from the school in their brand. It's a powerful, emotionally led piece that solidifies the school as a forward-thinking, cool and passionate place to be. You'll be able to see the link when I send it at the end of the session. Now, the second example would have been, and will be on the website that you go to, an undergrad level campaign piece for the University of Bristol. Again, watch in your own time after the session. It was created using much of the talent from the university as we absolutely could get our hands on. The score, the spoken word script piece, actors, voiceover artists were all University of Bristol talent working in collaboration with our own fabulous team. I would have given my right arm for that kind of experience when I was at university, so it felt good to be able to include students in the process. It's a piece that actually has been recut several times. Shortly after its creation, we actually went into the lockdown COVID situation, and so their big campaign launch has had to be rethought, and actually, because of the footage we were able to get, we were able to recut in several different ways that then allowed them to show to cover bases like COVID awareness and the way that the university was going to be dealing with that, as well as things like clearing as well. We always want to make sure the content that we create, and anyone that you're working with should think the same. They should think that any content they're creating for you should have as much value as absolutely can. Complex concepts and ideas, along with sometimes the more stale but important topics, struggle to be communicated through live visuals sometimes. Animation can be a wonderful answer to entertain and to engage. It also allows brand reinforcement with colour, typeface and style. A piece we created for Millfield, actually, to explore their academic offering has been a key tool for overseas events for the past 8 years, so it really held its value. It's important, however, just like all other media, to be individual here. Using template tools online can be very cheap, and I'm not saying don't use them, but in the same way as using stock images, it adds no bespoke or unique look that's consistent to your brand or school, and that's absolutely what's imperative here for all of us to keep in mind. Again, good examples on the website that I'll send you. JISC are one of those examples that's on the website. They're another client. You may know of them. They use animation extensively for their offering, and a fantastic example here. You can watch some of their stuff on their website. They used it for their tone of voice offering. They use it for communicating digital capabilities to a lot of their higher education providers that are their members. Creative handcuffs. Now, that's a better title. I should do that with the others as well. Creative handcuffs, what do I mean by that? I mean anything that means that the thing you would have liked to have done, cannot be done. That might be budget, it might be that everyone's in bubbles now and so we can't go and film in the same way that we want to. It could be the weather. Creative handcuffs exist all over the place, even if it's a leaf blower on campus when you wanted to get that interview. Most, if not every movie isn't the director's cut. There's always a compromise to be made, a political issue to work around or a rights issue that just stops everything altogether. And that's before we come to those budget constraints. There's always a barrier that means the approach we might want to take just cannot be done. But what do these challenges actually push us to do, certainly as creatives? And how do good creatives react and rise to that challenge? Well, a relevant example to the education sector is our current restrictions for in COVID is virtual reality. It's really come on in recent years, mainly around accessibility. YouTube natively supports, as does Vimeo, virtual reality, and nearly everyone holding a smartphone now has an intelligent way of getting a virtual open day available. Physically being at a school where we can get the best sense of its personality is always going to be the best thing to do. Of course it is. But now we really do have a next best option. It gives the ability to reach audiences overseas as well. So for those overseas students for boarding that would never normally be able to come to an open day, you really can access and reach them in a way that you couldn't before. My suggestion is carefully scripting each scene beforehand and having a student or students presenting to camera as if it's a parent on tour. It shows off, just with our user-generated content, the very product that your school is creating at the same time as all the facilities. This can be combined with webinar-style pieces delivered by head teachers or deans, YouTube or Facebook live sessions showing open day style areas of the school. Parents can log on to the most relevant live sessions to them, all hosted by the students and staff with live question and answer. Fab. Bit of a task to set up, but absolutely possible. We've even seen individual student portrait series content being created to add personality to the offering. And again, you can see an example of a fantastic virtual reality tool guided by students going onto the personalised webpage that I will link you to afterwards. That's for Epsom College in Surrey. Use your phone to watch the session if you've not used VR before. You'll see how much more immersive it is without even using a kind of virtual reality headset. If you were smart enough, you could then have a Google Cardboard template cutout created in your branding, cost very, very little. And then you post that out in the same bag as your prospectus, so that a parent or student can just fold it up, put their smartphone in, and virtually be on a tour of your school. A lovely point of difference. Distribution, told you we come to it. We mentioned it briefly, but it's as important as creating the material in the first place. It's simply not okay just to put something on a website. It's the same with having some flyers made and leaving them on the side of your desk. It's just not going to do anything. Think of your content in terms of a two-stage process. The attraction content, those brand level campaign pieces, are fed out into all the platforms that you know where your audience spend their time because you've done the research, you've worked out who those parent fictional characters are. So you know where they spend their time. This might be Facebook, it might be Instagram, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Twitter, it might be television advertising, YouTube ads, pre-roll, etc. It depends on your specific audience, which have completely influenced what you create in the first place. The second stage is the conversion content. This is your high-level informative content. Your audience are drawn to your website by the attraction content that they see in the places they feel comfortable, their social channels, for example, and then they're converted by the longer form content that sits on your platform, on your website, the way that you want to communicate to them. Your churn level, that first user-generated type level, works in the background constantly, keeping people on your radar, or keeping you on their radar, sorry, and in conversation. We go into great depth with this side of the process, but time really isn't on our side today. That churn content very much can be playlists on your YouTube channel, for example. So it can be there for subscriptions and people to subscribe to, so you can keep them up to date with what's going on. Now, what do we do next? Well, sharing video content on here hasn't been possible, sadly. I'll share just in a moment that little link, and you can go to that mini website, have a little look at your own time at some of that content. I've also created a document with links to relevant to different types of content, many more that I've discussed today, but they're all from an actual non-educational background. They're all commercial in some way. The idea being behind that these should give you inspiration for you to create content that's outside of the box and in no way similar to your competitors. They really are valuable, so please have a read of that document, which will be emailed to you following this session. What I'll also do is run a longer develop session, is what we call it, for anyone who would like just to go through any pain points that they have themselves, that they're facing at the moment, and chat through ways that they might resolve them. These are private one-on-one Zoom type calls, which have been really helpful to many of our own clients and others as well through the current struggles. So please don't hesitate with that. Drop me a message via LinkedIn or on email anytime. My details again are on the screen now, and I will just do the broadcast message of that link just before we go to any questions and answers. There you go. There's a little link that should take you straight to that mini website that's been custom personalized for you guys. I hope that's been useful. I know it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. 30 minutes isn't a long time, but again, I can go into detail about anything that you're needing separately anyway. But let's have a little look at any questions that have popped up on here. Oh, sorry, Liz, if the sound quality was poor. Hopefully you did manage to hear me. Did anyone else have any issues hearing me? Sorry about that. Are there any questions that anyone has? Please do pop them in the Q&A box now. It'd be great to be able to answer anything you've got in mind.
Okay. I've got a few questions here, Adam. Sorry, if you can hear me, Simon. Did I want to go to the top? Yeah, what length should films be, and why? So, should you produce?
There must be some. There must be some questions. We kind of covered everything.
Sorry, can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. Hang on.
Oh, sorry. Can you see the website link? It should just be above the message you've just sent, actually. It's the website link is simply www.jonesmillbank.com/c/MAS. So it should be on that on the screen now. Can you see it? Oh, good. Oh, you can see it. Lovely. What length should films be? Well, that is a good question. It does depend slightly on which level of content we're talking about. The longer informative level, high level informative pieces can be anything, in all honesty, up until 5 minutes. Facebook certainly is trying to support and give its algorithm much more importance to longer form content now. So we're talking much longer than 5 minutes, in some cases 15 maybe, and its platform will definitely prefer that. But the stuff that you'll be able to host online, the golden rule used to be don't go over 3 minutes, you'll start losing people. And that still is true to a certain extent. Your attraction level stuff, we're talking 30 to 90 seconds. Don't go any longer than that. Be very, very clear for one purpose, one audience, because you'll get a much better result. The churn level content can be longer because, again, it's subscription level stuff. It can go on a bit more. Age-wise is another question. The content for different ages of students and certainly parents should be very different. And again, it goes back to those fictitious parent kind of characters you'll create as part of your framework. And their questions are going to be different. What they find important is going to be different. And so the content that you want to create might be a little bit more humorous for someone. It might be a little bit more serious for someone else. For an older audience, so let's take a sixth form, for example, we actually try and use the students much more than we would ever before. We wouldn't use the staff really where possible, because for the first time the student is having much more of a say, you probably find this as well, over their chosen school that they'll go to or college that they go to. And so we want the students that are on camera, that are actually delivering the content through the camera, to be very much those that they can empathize with or familiarize with. And so we want to be able to show portrait type pieces so that the potential students can identify with them and say, okay, right, that's the place for me. I can see that person's similar to me, and they have similar worries, or they like doing this, and I'm similar to that. So you can build a little series of those type pieces that different people will identify with. For younger children, I mean, even nursery level or preschool, actually it's more about what we can see. So the parents want to be able to see the spaces. They want to be able to see that the care is happening. We don't necessarily need to hear it the entire time. And of course, even though interviewing children of that age is completely possible, it's a little harder sometimes. We've done things in the past where we've had little prompt questions on the upside down on a desk, and we've had an older student, sixth form or something, for example, sat with a little 3-year-old, 4-year-old, and they open up these questions and answer them together. And some of those questions are very silly. Some of them are, what's the meaning of life? And they discuss it together on camera, and it's a really lovely, humorous way of going about things. In terms of controlling what people share, I know that a lot of people have staff and that are teaching staff, but also perhaps the facility staff. They all have their own Twitter channels, for example, through your own brand, and keeping a constant and consistent message and brand feel and tone of voice through that is possible. But it's hopefully, if there's a session that your production company or your marketing company can run where people can attend, or even if it's a webinar type session, you can try and get over these are the general rules that we need to follow and try and keep that nice and simple. And hopefully then when and how they tweet or post should be a little bit more consistent if you don't have the control directly through the marketing department. It is difficult though, and I know there are a lot of clients of ours even that struggle. I think one of our clients, the most popular Twitter channel is the ground staff, purely because what they post. But that's a way of injecting personality into the offering, and so that kind of stuff should be celebrated, in my opinion, anyway, where it can be controlled. Is there any other questions up here that I can help with? I hope those answers have been useful. Can you see the website link now? I hope it is there. I will pop it. I've just broadcast it one more time in case it didn't pop up.
Hi. Hi, Adam. This is Rachel Hadley-Leonard. Can you hear me, Adam?
I'll show that now for you. But otherwise, I want to thank you so much for all of you joining me, and I hope that was useful to you. Please do add me on LinkedIn. It would be lovely to chat a little bit more, and get in touch if you do want to have a bit of a longer chat about anything in particular. I'm always here. I'll be as helpful as I possibly can. as will any of the other members of our team that might be able to add their own expertise, whether it's through animation, photography, filmmaking, anything like that at all. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I hope everything is well where you are.